It had something to do with Yellow Hill. That was like a term they used.
From Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
Yeah, and I don't remember how that fit into my email. I'm not going to say my email on
No, don't say it again.
Don't do that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to talk to Paul, you go through us, the rest of us, through the normal email.
Yeah.
Spinecrackerspod@gmail.com.
Yes.
A blockchain of 3.
Send nudes.
Blockchain.
I mean, obviously, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the wire technology alone was...
Yeah.
You just had to be... it came out at the perfect time. I was also a fan. I wanted the green jade sword that they were trying to get.
Mm-hmm. So cool.
I don't remember any of this.
Redundant.
That movie was fucking awesome.
Is that true? Is it redundant to say green jade? Is there no other type of jade?
I guess jade is a material in green. I don't know. And jade
jade is jade
a stone.
Yeah.
Is it a stone? Yeah.
Yeah.
But are there other colors of it though?
I'm gonna Google
shades of the
aqua
same
jade.
color.
Jade. It's a mineral, right? Mostly green varieties, but also appears naturally in yellow and white. So
I'm gonna
Up
Google
yours,
jade,
Matt. ...
Whoa. Although, thank you for elucidating so that there's other types of jade. I had no idea.
Yeah,
jade
neither.
was synonymous with green to me until now. There's white and yellow versions. Damn.
I guess so.
So that's the
Jade
geology.
has 6 natural colors: green, lavender, red, yellow, white, and black.
Lavender sounds sick.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Give me a lavender sword.
I want lavender jade.
Let's all buy each other different jade swords
for Christmas.
that we combine when we meet each other and make.
Hey,
it
is my birthday coming up, guys. So
that's true.
That is
Christmas
true.
Generally, happy holidays, everybody.
We're back.
Basically, close enough for me to say that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think anytime like the week before Thanksgiving to the week after New Year's, you can say happy holidays.
It's the holidays.
Bingo.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, I hope everyone's.
We're still shaking off the cobwebs a little bit here, folks.
Yeah.
This is the Spinecrackers podcast, and we're back from our very, very comparatively brief hiatus compared to the last one we took.
Right.
Yep. We all met each other in person, hugged.
Everyone came to visit me at my bunker in an undisclosed location.
That has been revealed on the podcast before, but we won't say it again now.
Has it?
Make them work for it.
I'm pretty sure
the state, probably the state. Yeah,
we've all through context clues revealed where we actually are.
Yeah. You guys, way more specifically than me. Yeah, you could pretty much figure out the town precisely where these two live if you wanted to.
I would love to be big enough for some nerd on Suicide Watch to try and take my life.
You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm just going to tell you my GPS coordinates.
Yeah, exactly.
If you make it to the end past the Harry Potter segment, you'll get my coordinates.
Just Paul at the end in his town, just like, you've made it so far, but not vanquished me. He has one of those stupid wands, fake wands from the World of Harry Potter experience or whatever at Disney.
The Wizarding World, dude. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter. It's not Disney. It's Universal Orlando, dude. Come on.
And it's also not stupid. It's not.
It's just not.
It's objectively cool.
So what's new, everyone? We're back. Spinecrackers podcast. If you missed us, I'm Gabe.
I'm Paul.
And we're back. We're better than ever. We're
better than ever.
We got some great stuff coming up, including next time a end of the year awards ceremony spectacular.
Yeah, just an absolute spectacular.
It's going to be a spectacular.
Yeah. Just a variety show with goofs and spoofs, spills and thrills, and just it's absolute.
Yes.
I'm renting a Ferris wheel to ride the entire time while I record.
Hosted by Billy Crystal.
Yes.
It's just not us. It's just Billy Crystal just has to read all 3 of our parts in a different voice.
That would rule.
It would be funny.
rule.
It would be an
It'd be a funny
achievement.
spoof.
It would be an achievement of voice acting for the ages. That's for sure.
Right.
Bring him out of retirement
Yeah.
from hanging out with the Yankees all the time.
Yeah.
Or the Mets.
I
Get
think
it figured out.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I wanna
Stupid,
say,
Paul. Stupid. I should know.
I want to say he's a Yankees fan, but I'm not 100%.
You're gonna get a stern off the show reprimand later.
From Billy Crystal himself,
From
who we
Crystal.
know is a listener.
Yes.
I'm going to hell.
You are.
I mean, let's be real. At this point in my life, if it was to end right now, I probably would still. Maybe.
One of the circles, maybe one of the less bad circles.
Mm-hmm. Or we could all just be radically wrong about the whole metaphysics of it.
That's true. We have to figure that out in the philosophical segment of our reading book club.
We got to get in that mindset for this one.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, we do have a bit of a thinker on our hands here today, folks. as it were, a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah. I've had to put the old thinking cap on when I started reading some of the words in this.
Just once or twice.
There basically were a lot of high level ideas.
They were coming fast and thick, and honestly, I was starting to get scared.
Yeah, did you have a scare?
I did, and I had a scare.
I'm still in recovery mode for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So let's dive right into it, huh?
We
We were talking about this a little bit off pod, but I love that that's a ruined phrase now when that's a lot of our interactions.
What?
Me and you were actually talking about this off the show, but
Yeah.
you can't say that now.
Why not?
Because it's not because it's bad, but just because it's like silly and like said a lot.
It has mystique and wonder for the listeners.
I didn't know.
Like,
I didn't know that you weren't allowed to say that anymore.
I'm joking. I'm making it. It's more. I'm just making fun of that Tim Heidecker, Joe Rogan spoof. Just
Yeah.
like, we actually talked about this off the podcast.
Oh,
Yeah.
And you were saying like,
I fucking love
but
it so much.
today,
Matt's
episode.
Matt's pick.
my pick, "The Confidence Man" by Herman Melville. We'll be discussing that.
So, why'd you pick this book, Matt? And what's the conceit? What's it about?
Okay, yeah. So I picked it just because. I mean, first of all, it's Herman Melville. Like, I don't know. I was just like, I've attempted to read Moby Dick probably like 3 times, and
What happened?
I don't know.
Did you like it or no?
I actually did. I don't really know why I stopped. Just
Hey,
bored.
what happened?
Hey,
I don't know.
Bubba.
My grandmother was so like disappointed in me because she would partake in the like they do this in a lot of places, right? Like the Moby Dick readathons.
Like yearly?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure they happen every year, like Bloomsday and stuff. But it's just where like people gather and over the course of I don't know how long, like read sections of Moby Dick. My grandma
Wow.
used to do this.
That's crazy. I know people do that still with Infinite Jest also.
Yeah.
Infinite Summer, whatever it's called.
Right. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, same idea, I think.
So, one of these glaring lacunae in my reading, and somebody who I don't know why I just like it was a little bit of guilt, and then I heard about the conceit of this one, and just thought it sounded like really interesting.
Have you read any? What like? Are you too, Paul? Have you guys read any other Herman Melville? Like I've read. What's fucking called Bartleby, but I think that's it.
I haven't read any.
Right.
This was my
The
first.
Scrivener.
Yeah. the guy that I prefer not to guy.
Yeah, and I think the only reason I read it is because I heard Zizek making that reference back in the day, and I was like, okay. No, I actually read the books and shit, dude.
So I don't even have that. Like, so I don't. Yeah, it's one of these cases where I just don't have a great reason. I just know the name Melville. I've been meaning.
Wait, so
to
you haven't
bone
read
up.
any other Melville other than your attempts at Moby Dick?
That's right.
Okay, I was just double checking.
Him, like Poe and Emerson and some other American writers, I've been meaning to bone up on and like, actually familiarize myself with. And so yeah, that's part of this process. And this being Melville's last ever, I believe, published work.
Emerson slaps.
And he gets roasted in this.
Emerson does kind of get roasted, and Thoreau. They both they become a little bit of a comedic duo,
right? So that's funny already, and just like it being his last, like where it lands chronologically in American history is interesting to me. And then I just heard that it was like,
which is where again? When was this published originally? I don't remember off the top of my head.
1857.
57.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So just right before the Civil War. And then just like the fact that it's just like all of these scam artists on a boat talking to each other and kind of being the living embodiments of various types of scams and ways in which to manipulate people's trust in order to rip them off, basically. The rough and dirty of that was just funny to me, and I was like, that sounds cool. I want to start with this.
I think this is a good pick for our podcast because I don't know. I think a couple of our picks we've kind of picked the most critically like discouraged book by the author. I'm thinking of like The Miner. It's kind of like a minor type book for Melville.
Yeah, we seem to do that over and over again.
There definitely
we pick the most idiosyncratic, like least critically well received book from a lot of these people for some reason.
Yeah.
There is a dearth of shit on this book out there in the public sphere. Gabe, you sent us some legal, I don't know, academic articles.
No, I don't think it's
all above board.
Yeah.
On the subject, but man, there's
plenty of that. That's the thing, dude. I mean, again, this is probably not a can of worms we want to open, but there's a huge, not like Moby Dick, but there's plenty of academic literature about this text, but not a lot of,
not a lot of popular engagement with it, and that's also what I was once I was like, poking around trying to find stuff. I was like, well, we can remedy that too if this is any good. Which, spoilers, I happen to think it is.
Dude, spoiler alert.
We're back. Gabe took a huge shit. We had to stop the show. It was so bad that we had to stop the show. All green lights.
I didn't want to leave you guys in the lurch because I didn't know how long it would take. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you.
And
so let's try and find it again. Okay?
We're back. Okay. We're back. Yeah, I did.
You got to try to find the magic.
So, Matt, you were saying you liked the book. You sort of gave a little bit of a summary about, So, okay, where does this? This book takes place on a riverboat, right, in the Mississippi, on April 1st.
Yes,
April Fool's Day of which year? I forget exactly which year it takes place in.
Is it not just contemporaneous with?
I feel like it may be. I feel like it's specified, but I forget if it's different or exactly the same. But yeah, and then as you said, it sort of just follows. I mean, this is one of the kind of questions that's going to become relevant. Is this a character that we're following, or multiple characters, or
I think
none at all?
Well, yeah, and I think all of those are relevant ways to, or like they all have validity, which is also the point, to a degree.
Right.
But I think there is like at least a finite numbered cast of people that float in and out, basically, and a lot of them are introduced at the very beginning, and then they like pop back later.
It's a finite number, but it is very large. There's a lot of fucking characters in this book to keep track of.
Yeah, I think there's like 7 like sort of like mainstay kind of like keep cropping up, but there's a ton more who just flit in and out and really just like, enter stage left, exit stage right, done, never heard from again. And the boat is called what? Le Fidèle?
De Fidèle.
Il Fidèle, which is another little joke. I'm assuming that means, I didn't look that up, I'm assuming that just means the truth. Or true or something.
I think it means like loyal or something like that.
Oh,
or
loyal.
Or some like
fidelity. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're just already right out the gate, just loading it up with like kind of ironic, I don't know, just like little jokes right at the gate.
Yeah. Like it being on April Fool's Day, and so I mean, it thinks like my read is that we're basically following one guy.
You think that?
That's my read on it. But I think it's worth talking about for sure. But it's essentially a series of sometimes very complicated, sometimes very simple vignettes of this person and or multiple persons, who is going around this boat, essentially conning people in various ways, pretending to be injured. Selling fake insurance, pretending to work for a company that like can contract you out with day laborers, and on and on, right?
Because what is it? It's the Confidence Man, and then what's the Masquerade? His Masquerade.
Yeah, the subtitle is His Masquerade. The Confidence Man, His Masquerade. So that's one reason I think it's one guy, because it says his singular, and the other reason is at the very beginning of the book, there's a reference made to like a wanted poster of a guy who's been going around the area scamming people.
Yes, yeah. So
But I'd be curious to hear, like, in your reading of it, what sort of maybe pointed you potentially in the other direction as well.
Well, I read it. I mean, today I was hanging out with Matt and I asked him like that exact question. I was kind of unclear because I was reading it as just one person. That was my just like initial inkling, but I was obviously confused because every character seems to be titled differently, and I mean they're on a freaking boat, so how big could the boat be? How could this one guy like shapeshift into multiple people without other people being like,
right?
That's the herb doctor, or no, that's the guy who was like talking to me about orphans, or
yeah.
So there's like a level of unbelievability to it being one guy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is definitely a strangeness to it in that sense, because the dude, assuming it's one person, he changes like race, he changes like accents, he changes like essentially I think the only thing he doesn't change is gender. I don't think he ever appears as a woman. But
not the goneril potentially, or I guess maybe not.
Say again?
The goneril.
The goneril.
Do you remember her?
No.
It's like kind of a weird reverse like gaslight where she kind of gaslights this other guy and gets him to seem insane by like her being mean to their daughter. Together.
Oh yeah. I don't see. That was one moment where I don't know if. Yeah, I didn't think that was the Confidence Man in that moment. So yeah.
Because that was a story relayed, and there's a number of nested stories as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, you're right, Paul. This guy like changes everything about himself. Seemingly, like temporality is a little bit lost. It takes place over the course of one day, and it gets progressively, later, but seemingly very quickly at certain points, like very sort of relatively quick intervals. And so I wonder if there is some sort of element of kind of unreality to it, in that sense. But yeah, I don't know.
I kind of forgot about the wanted poster in just sort of getting subsumed in all the other things that, because there's such a like range of things discussed, and it is so kind of like episodic in ways, or like vignette like. So like my simple brain does kind of just get like I may have lost the thread that is all of the hints being dropped that it is a single person, but I just sort of assumed myself that it was it was the Confidence Man as newly labeled archetypal being that does contain the many masks, like as in it's the many faces of people who are, I guess, ontologically different, but they're like representative of the same phenomenon, just in all of its many guises.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think there's definitely something to that, and certainly like that's something Melville would have been concerned about, in terms of the kind of emerging, just like thematically, the emerging sense of American individualism as an identity formation, and kind of like the ways in which this character in this book kind of subverts that as a goal of both like literary realism of the time and of the idea of an American self, where what this character does is, kind of undermine that very idea, right? That there is like a stable identity that's you as an individual that can be pointed. For this person, it's really all their identity is in their moment to moment social relations, and their, to some degree, their outward appearance as well. And I think, like, I don't know, for me, the other reason that I just assumed that it was one person is that there are people who, like, the setups for some of the scams are very complicated to the point that, like, one person will, like, mention another person that they've met on the boat in order to get the person they're speaking to go seek that person out and give that person money. Right. So I think that some of the scams are like too, and to some degree they all hang together in that way. Not all of them like as much as some of the individual ones, but like there's clearly a kind of like long con that this person's running, like a chain of cons that all hang together narratively amongst themselves. And that was another reason that I think that I feel pretty strongly that it's one person.
I buy that, and I it never really that idea escaped my conceiving of the book as I was reading it at some point, but I like it. I think
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, like, thematically though, I think it makes more sense for it not to be just one character. To me, I just thought like one of Melville's themes was just like, this is most of America as an individual now, like these types of people. So why would it just be narrowed down to one character? When I felt like he was trying to make a point about like society as a whole.
Well, I think it's because the point he's trying to make about whatever, we can talk about his intentionality, but I think the theme that's like relevantly at play or deeply at play here is that there is no such thing as, like, if they were all different people, then those people would all be different individuals that we could point to and say, this person has such and such characteristics, this person has such and such characteristics. I think mashing them all together in this amalgam where there's no stable identity that we can point to, that really ruptures like what was going on in American thinking and philosophy. Like, this is why the Emerson and Thoreau bit is important in terms of like the individual and self-reliance and all that sort of stuff. What Melville's doing here kind of like shatters that and really undermines it in some philosophically profound ways, where there is no stable self, there is no stable identity. It's all in the sort of like chaotic contingent flow of social relations and appearance. And having it be one person emphasizes that in a much more kind of like distilled way to me.
So you just think personally that it's like the stronger literary move, and that's why he probably did it?
I certainly think it's the stronger literary move, and I'll confess I had the opposite experience. It never crossed my mind that they were multiple people. ever. Both, I guess, for some of the reasons that I've said, but just like the title refers to one guy. But
well, yes, I guess I wonder if it's more like all notions are are kind of equally able to be entertained, and that's also part of the confusion. I don't like the fundamental truth that it's one guy. You know, first of all, like, which of the con people would you say are the confidence man versus like the kind of random people he tries to fleece over the course of the book?
Well, this is why I said earlier that that the nature of his identity is relational, right? Like, he is the confidence man in relation to those that he fleeces, and that's it, right? It's this purely relational, purely sort of intersocial identity, you know, and like, so basically in all of these vignettes, whoever scams the other person, that's the confidence man, right? But I think that's one person, or one like physical body, I guess we could say, right? Now there are moments I do think it's important, and like we're maybe getting ahead, like bouncing around a little bit, but there are, I think, moments where this gets really muddled. So for example, when the confidence man is taking the identity of what's his name, Frank Goodman, and he's talking
the
Cosmopolitan, aka Frank Goodman, yeah,
right.
And he gets in that. There's a very long section where he gets involved in this philosophical discourse with a guy named Charlie Noble, and they kind of start. It becomes this kind of like, you get the sense that Noble is also kind of a scammer. You don't know exactly his angle, but they get into this kind of like game of chicken with each other, and it goes on for quite a bit. And one of the things Melville does in that section is totally eliminates like attribution in the dialogue, to the point where it becomes virtually impossible to keep track of like which character is saying what.
Yeah.
And so I do think he plays a bit with this, you know, where is the identity of the confidence man, and playing this kind of like shell game with people's physical bodies. Yeah. But I think those cases are a little bit rarer when it's like, I don't know, more obvious to me.
I like that segment. It's two guys trying to both see if like the other will like give them money.
Yeah,
Ultimately.
yeah, exactly.
But just through these like horribly long, bloviating, oblique ways of being like, here's how I'm going to defend my whole entire worldview of trusting persons, and how it's important to your like whole, you know, allowing yourself to have the title of human being, and then it's quietly just like, so can I get like $10, dude? And you just, and then the guy's like, whoa, how dare you? You know, of course it comes down to base currency trading, and then that guy sort of reacts to that, and then slowly he just was like, and so if you were real about what you're saying, you should give me $10. It's really funny. It's the book is super funny.
I mean, it was funny to me mostly because, I mean, for me it was hyper difficult to read. It's just like the old language or something. But I had,
you were saying on a prose basis it just wasn't even sticking that well in your head.
No, it's like I read the first half twice. I told you this today, and it's like I feel like I just didn't read it. You know, it's just like it's hyper complicated. There's the sentence structure is obviously like old. It's not old English, but it's a lot of commas. A lot of commas. You know,
well, that's
pretty
I would say that
high level vocabulary.
Yes, I think the fact that this is Melville's like latest, I think even on a prose level, like the way, I think they're called Oxford commas. I can't remember. Gabe, would you say that these are Oxford commas we're encountering here in this book a lot of the time?
Where specifically? I didn't notice. I didn't notice like a predominance of them. No, but maybe. But I honestly, I confess to not paying particularly close attention to grammar when I read.
Well, I'm just saying it matters in this, and Paul was saying even that it was, I think it's even hard for the time period, because Melville, I think, was even on a sentence structure level, like hiding the like subject-object relations in like nested like sentences addressing different things and like going off on tangents and only circling back until like the very last fucking minute. So I just think even like prose structure was playing a shell game of sorts on you in terms of what was even being talked about.
Yeah. No, that I think that's
at least for like the
true.
longer passages where people are really flying into like their the high style where whenever I always knew that like whenever something was starting to go long, like with like Frank Goodman and whatever, it's like that's when you knew somebody was trying to put something over someone else.
Well, that's good to know actually, because I think I was thinking this whole time, or the whole time reading it, was like, is this how like basic people from from the year 1850 just talk to each other like on a boat going down the Mississippi River? They're just like having these long like Oxford Dictionary type conversations with each other, and it's good to know that kind of was not what was happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a stylistic imitation of what the Confidence Man is doing to his victims in terms of Melville's writing of it. I think that's perceptive and true and right.
Yeah, because I remember like I was actually listening to a crime podcast in the car, and the term Confidence Man just happened to come up like while I was in the midst of reading this book. And like the way it was described was like somebody also like attempting someone who convinces you through trust that you are in a better position than they are, which I don't you know what I mean, like just like that somehow they're in the weaker position and you'd be like helping a buddy out,
which is basically this character's MO, right? That's that's what he does this whole time,
right? And the book. So the book kicks off right away. You said there's like the wanted poster, and then people are queuing up to board the boat, and there's like a black man who's like mutilated, and I don't think he has like legs.
Well, I actually think something really important happens even before that.
Oh, go for
it. Which is where there's the like mute homeless guy holding up the signs while the crowd is kind of like thronging and boarding the boat. And
I think he's deaf, dumb, and mute.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like deaf. This total. I don't know what the term for that is.
Me neither.
Yeah, if there is one, let us know. If there's any, never mind. I can't say that.
That's a mean joke in and of itself.
Yeah. But so anyway, this dude goes up, I believe, like right around to the placard, the wanted poster. Or is it the wanted poster that he's standing next to, or is it the barber's sign? I think it's the wanted poster. And he's holding up all these, it's basically like a whiteboard that he keeps like writing on and erasing. I guess it's maybe a chalkboard, but he's basically writing like, charity thinketh no evil, charity endureth all things, charity believeth all things, charity never faileth. Mm-hmm. And then he kind of disappears. I think that's already the Confidence Man.
Yeah.
Kind of like seeding this idea in everyone boarding the boat that he's going to prey on later, these values of charity, trust, which were like very important, seen as very important socially for like the maintenance of the American still relatively new American state,
right? As
a sort of like part of the glue of like social cohesion, right? And so he's exploiting that, and I think that's already him from the jump.
Yes, and that was like part of like the whole like sinister aspect of the disillusion of this, and like I for one of the academic articles, I forget what it was. It was like describing the slow transformation of the Confidence Man as an archetype, and in from like the kind of like the Antichrist, kind of like the fucking acid that's gonna melt everything down, into the heroic entrepreneur, essentially, like the man.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah,
who lives about his wits and like kind of like just and this is why the Emerson thing is so interesting, because like and the Thoreau thing, like, you know, I
So
feel
there's
like
a
Melville,
moment we should just be explain
sure,
explain
yeah.
this. The like there's a I forget the names that they're given. Matt, do you remember? But there's this older guy who espouses this like philosophy, and then his young disciple that
he's just called he's called the Mystic.
the mystic, and then I forget what his disciple's name is.
But he has another funny kind of like Dickens style name that is like means what he is. You know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, exactly. But anyway, the confidence man encounters these two guys and engages them in philosophical conversation in an attempt to scam them. And these are like
I got it.
Yeah.
It's Mark Winsome.
Mark Winsome, right.
And his disciple Egbert.
Right. And these are pretty obviously based on the type of philosophy they're espousing. I personally think Melville's pretty uncharitable to Emerson, and he's pretty unfairly representing Emerson's actual philosophy. That's Patreon only content. But these are clearly meant to be stand-ins for Emerson and Thoreau. Yeah. So sorry, keep going with your point.
And you know, I agree that they're uncharitable, and but Melville, I think first of all, Melville was like acutely, I think, sensitive, to bullshit, and had some generational trauma there of like especially with people fleecing for loans and then having it compound interest, and his family was ruined by something like that, I believe. So I think there's a reason he goes so hard in those particular avenues of the thing. But then, but like, as uncharitable as it was probably to like Emerson's philosophy, he was still observing like real ills that were starting to like, right? You know what I mean? Like, he was like righteous against these real things that were starting to crop up in America, I guess. Like these.
Well, and I think that point you made from that article about like the gradual turn from these scammer confidence men figures as like a social blight into like effectively like the model of fucking Elon Musk and stuff.
Right.
These days, like where it's like, yeah, you get ahead where and how you can, and get scrappy and fucking, do whatever you need to do. You know what I mean? And that becoming the sort of like, so the shift in American ethos over time, I think that maybe that's something Melville himself was already perceiving and again, I think this is a vulgar reduction of Emersonian, like people talk about like self-reliance. He wasn't talking about capitalism, but I think you're right that's probably something Melville was thinking about.
But a sort of epidemic misinterpretation of Emerson, you could see as just sort of the negative fallout of something that Emerson might have not made clear enough in Melville's opinion.
Definitely,
and it's like if there's a net negative that you can see, maybe it's still worth being like, fuck you. I don't know. I agree with you. I think it's not nice. I don't think that's what Emerson meant, but
no, for sure.
So you don't think did you say that you don't think Melville was talking about capitalism with this book?
No, I just was talking about. I was making like a kind of a side point about Emerson and Melville's sort of like potentially, implied critique of some of Emerson's philosophy. Okay.
Because Mark Winsome is like isn't he just kind of basically like a crypto Calvinist or something? He's propounding what's called the philosophy of no help, right?
right. Which is kind of a direct inverse to Emerson's idea of self-reliance, right? At least linguistically.
Right. Where it's just, it's kind of what we're still contending with. Like, we always lament, like, exceptionalism and radical individualism as being still kind of like what's poison now about the U.S., kind of, people falling back on these, like, fundamental myths that really, like, fuel everyone's behavior in ways that are just basically negative and short-sighted and self-centered. And that starts around this time, which is just why it's such an interesting time period in the U.S. as well. Like, this is just before we have our first ever, like, split right down the middle, internal conflict. You know, it's like
Yeah,
it's in the air.
Yes.
3 years before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then how soon after this? When did Melville die? I forget.
He died in 1891.
Yeah. He.
Oh, okay.
He
So
lived
he
a while
he
longer.
kept it together for a while, because he then he published this, and then like changed.
stopped.
He became like some kind of office worker for the rest of his life, right?
Well, he was like
Yeah.
he was a lecturer. But yeah, he just like kind of lost the will to write because his career was going downhill slowly. And this one was like the worst of the worst in terms of critical acclaim. So he just kind of gave up. But he still lived for what, like 30 more years?
Yeah. He famously died, and his name was misspelled in his obituary.
Yep.
Just a completely poor.
Yeah.
People were just like, weird guy. You can get his books. He wasn't revived until the 20s. You know, obviously, like our boy Joyce, just constantly, you know, into pop culture, but was like, you know, have you read? You know, Moby Dick is the reason Moby Dick. Yeah, it's what everyone read and was like, this is actually incredible. So, like in the 20s, there was this revival where U.S. publishers were trying to like, and I don't know what else, were trying to like rediscover the American tradition in literature, and that's kind of when most Americans started to know anything about Melville.
I think one thing that made made people like difficult to at the time to read him was that he apparently changed styles like drastically from book to book too.
Yeah.
Like, he was like very readable in the beginning. He kind of wrote like kind of poppy, like newspaper type stories.
Sort of,
you know?
yeah, exactly. Like pseudo journalistic accounts of like travels and stuff.
Yeah, but then he like got more and more, you know, into certain issues that I think people either went over their heads or they were just like not keeping up with his style changes. But yeah, he just kind of like was constantly evolving writing style wise, and I guess the peak or the, you know, the end point of that was this book.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, again, I promise I'll read Moby Dick. I promise.
Who are you
But I heard that
promising, dude?
Yeah.
Myself.
The inside god.
Yeah, the wheels in my head. I forget. I heard his first book though was very strange, like almost like surreal. And then he reeled it back. Anyway,
Yeah. So going back a little bit to it's hard and maybe unproductive to go through this chronologically per se in terms of the like unfolding of the events, because, you know, like as I've said, the whole book takes place over a day. Shout outs to Joyce again. But, you know, and there are some ways that the events link together in terms of the interlocking mechanisms of some of these scams. For example, you know, and I just wanted to come back to your initial point, whatever you were going to make about the crippled African-American man on the boat, who becomes like this spectacle. I don't know if you had a specific point you wanted to make about that or just wanted to kind of start there.
it's just that that's where I feel it. You know, like you said, yes, there's potentially this guy seeding notions to then subvert later on, but that's the first instance of because the word confidence also appears in every segment, almost on every page. It feels like.
Yeah.
So like there's this African sort of crippled guy going around just begging for change and like doing a little song, and you know, people are kind of delighted and are giving him some money as they wait for to board the boat. And then a guy who's crippled a little bit less, he has like a gimp leg or something, is like, I don't think he's crippled. And then everyone starts to be like, "What? Are you sure?" Like that's, and then at some point someone's like, "I don't think he's black."
Right. I think I forget if it's
yeah.
the same guy or someone else, but yeah.
I think it's like two other people,
Yeah.
and it's just like, and so then there's an immediate and very obvious discussion about like, identity and like how can you feign it? And they're like, yeah, they talk about like minstrel shows and like fucking white people playing black people, and like the guy's like, those are, yeah, but that's just a joke. They don't look black. And then he's like, well, you know, who knows? And I don't know. And then this idea of like
Right.
this brotherhood of being maimed and like two cripples. And he's like, well, I'm less so than you. And also I think you're fake. I don't know. It was just like immediately there is all of these.
Yeah, identity and sort of group identity becomes like instantly important.
And instantly toxically destroyed. And there's just no
Challenged, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no shared solidarity and like shared experience. There's no, you know, yeah. So it's just it goes hard immediately,
Right.
and then everyone gets on the boat.
Yeah, and then I mean I think so. Like, and then speaking to the point that I was making earlier about how these scams interlock, the way that scene sort of ends is that there's this there's this like minister or religious man who's like,
Right.
look, we need to. He's a little bit suspicious, but then he feels bad about it, being suspicious because he's supposed to be trusting of his fellow man and sympathetic and so on and so on. And so he's like, listen, we should believe this guy. Of course he's crippled. Of course he's like, this is all real.
Yeah.
And then, you know, but then he's also like, well, can you prove it? Basically, right? And then the
Yeah, I'm not about to look like a jackass.
Yeah, exactly. Then
show me a little something.
And then the confidence man, disguised as the African American crippled guy.
In your opinion,
But then, so this is the point. He goes, yeah, of course I can prove it. Just go find my friend with the leaf in his hat or whatever.
right?
Yeah. Or what is it? The grass or the weed? I forget what it is.
Weed in the hat, yeah.
Weed,
yeah.
right? Yeah, the weed in his hat or whatever. And they're like, okay, yeah. And so then that's kind of the next step is trying to go find this person with the weed in his hat who's like, oh, this is my friend. He'll vouch for me and all that stuff. And then, of course, right, every time when they find the next person in the chain,
Yes.
they're like, oh, you know what? I just saw that other guy leave the boat at the last stop.
That's true.
You know,
Yeah.
So I just think it's pretty clear that this is all one guy, like, telling this long scam narrative.
He's like the apex predator. He's like the xenomorph.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll buy it. I mean, I barely read this book anyway, so I can't even really have an opinion on what I thought he was the same guy.
You can't. You either read it or you don't, and you read it, dude.
So
I will
is
say that all the words I read the words on the page. That's basically all I could say about this.
I mean,
That's the Paul guarantee.
that's the bulk.
Yeah, the words met my eyes.
I mean, it is worth saying that, like, this is not an easy book to read. I would say. I think this this would fit under the sort of conceptual umbrella that we've talked about a lot on this show, the sort of like narrative of what is and is not a quote unquote difficult book. I think this is a difficult book.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult in the sense of the depth as opposed to the even immediate difficulty of reading it. You know, like even just talking now is like I did kind of forget that he could just be this like polymorphous single entity. And then, like, what that would even mean. Yeah, I don't know. And
also just like the narrative and like the lack of an actual plot too makes the whole reading experience pretty difficult because it is just like kind of segmented. There's what, like 50 chapters? 60?
Yeah, there's like 50 plus chapters, I think. Maybe just under 50. The last it's 45.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, some of them lead into the next chapter, but some of them will just like be shorter and jump backwards or jump to a completely different thing that doesn't come into play ever again.
And then there's a few weird sections that are just like their own kind of like self-contained stories or parables told by a character to another about this or that topic. Like there's the long section about the the like general who like dedicated his life to like hating Native Americans as much as possible, or
Yes.
which
The
is
metaphysics of Indian hate.
that's the chapter title, which we need to talk about, which because I think that's a really interesting and weird section. But then there's the parable of what's his name, China Aster, which I read some interesting stuff about that. Like arguably this is kind of a retelling of Melville's father's situation. This is about someone who takes out it's about the evils of loans basically, and someone who takes out a small loan from a friend and it ruins his life. And then there's a few other things like that, and then also there's like three weird little like philosophical interludes where the narrator is just talking to the reader directly about like various concepts in fiction and like the characters that they're reading about.
Just lit crit. Starts to happen.
Yeah,
just straight up literary theory.
Yeah.
It's just like, what do you really think that real is real? Yeah, like
just directly to the reader, like very, very, very out of nowhere.
Which adds the final layer. Fuck you.
Shit.
This book reminds me of Ryan Reynolds.
Dude, Ryan Reynolds is a modern day confidence man, dude.
He is. He would be perfect. He's so quick.
He would be perfect in the Confidence Man movie.
He's so charming, but kind of dangerous.
The Confidence Man movie. Oh my
Starring
God.
Ryan Reynolds. Just in blackface right at the beginning.
God.
Oh my God.
Well, I think this book, right. The first of all, the sort of fourth wall breaking, just like, what do you even think reality is? What do you think a representation of it would look like, kind of stuff, is super interesting, and that adds the next layer, which is obviously authorial intervention on all of this, right? Like, again, like I love this kind of thing, because it's just like, the further back you can find these same qualms in certain art, the more interesting it gets. Like, he's like, am I just manipulating you? Essentially, I guess, is like part of what he puts in the reader's head directly. Melville.
Yeah. So I kind of just want to read a little bit from a couple of those chapters, or from one, and then maybe we can come back to them. So the chapters in question are 14, 33, and 44 are these kind of like meta, like directly addressing the reader, like literary theory, just like meditations. And so the first one is called "Worth the Consideration of Those to Whom It May Prove Worth Considering," which is like already just hilarious. It's just like tautological, right?
Yeah.
So he's talking about realism, which I think is important, and like what is the nature of realism in literature, and specifically in terms of the way characters are drawn and portrayed, because I think Melville is speaking to literary realism of his time,
right,
sort of directly in terms of like, potential critiques of the way he's approaching this book. And so anyway, he says, this is a bit long, but stick with me. True, it may be urged that there is nothing a writer of fiction should more carefully see to, as there is nothing a sensible reader will more carefully look for, than that, in the depicting of any character, its consistency should be preserved. But this, though at first blush seeming reasonable enough, may upon a closer view prove not so much so. For how does it couple with another requirement, equally insisted upon perhaps, that while to all fiction is allowed some play of invention, yet fiction based on fact should never be contradictory to it? And is it not a fact that in real life, a consistent character is a rara avis, rare bird in Latin? Which being so, the distaste of readers to the contrary sort in books can hardly arise from any sense of their untrueness. It may rather be from perplexity as to understanding them. But if the acutest sage be often at his wit's end to understand living character, shall those who are not sages expect to run and read character in those mere phantoms which flit along a page like shadows along a wall? And I just think that's such an interesting like way of putting the question of like realism, right? Because we talk about character and realism as like, oh, this character felt so real and felt so their characterization was rock solid and clear and consistent throughout. But of course, no one's actually fucking like that in real life, right?
Right.
And so he's making this point, which I think further lends evidence to the idea that the confidence man is supposed to be one person, because he's constantly shape shifting and adapting and evolving and becoming these different identities, which is closer to the way Melville sees actual people behaving than the sort of like one clear, concise, solid character description that was supposed to be the gold standard of like realism in literature.
And I think that's also, though, his critique of like let's say the result of the popularization of Emersonian self-reliance being this valorization of like how beautiful it is that the perfectly self-reliant man is somebody who adapts to all situations, and like kind of trying to demonstrate the ugly side of that idea, like how it actually is manifesting potentially in like an ugly world that incentivizes the worst of that notion of self-reliance. But still, I think that's part of what he's not happy with, even though he might not have a solution per se, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I think. Sorry, I just want to read a little more because I thought this section was really brilliant and also funny. Mm-hmm. So this is on 85, the next page of that chapter. If reason be judge, no writer has produced such inconsistent characters as nature herself has. It must call for no small sagacity in a reader unerringly to discriminate in a novel between the inconsistencies of conception and those of life. And elsewhere, experience is the only guide here. But as no man's experience could be coextensive with what is, it may be unwise in every case to rest upon it. When the duck-billed beaver of Australia was first brought stuffed to England, the naturalists, appealing to their classifications, maintained that there was, in reality, no such creature. The bill in the specimen must needs be, in some way, artificially stuck on. And I just think that's such a great example and like such a just deep dig at a lot of his literary contemporaries, frankly, and their ideas of character. Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of. Yeah, exactly.
Right. He's definitely like, this is such a shallow, almost insulting notion, the capital R realism stuff.
Well, and even more specifically, that it's less real.
Yeah, right.
Because of that, you know?
Yeah. And I think despite there being not a quote-unquote plot, first of all, like Gabe is saying, the scams do link to each other and interrelate. And then also, I think just more basically, the build-up to the complexity of what's being discussed also has like kind of linear quality, where you get introduced with like this. He shows the development of how all of these kind of scams and lies and opportunistic adaptations build out, I think, so that, you know, initially, like, there's like a merchant who gets scammed by the confidence man, like early on, right? Just by being like, no, we like, he's just like, we've met before, and the guy's like,
yes.
The guy's like, no, he's like, look, I'm fucking dude, I'm really put out, I'm broke, like. And the guy's like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know who you are. He's like, no, we've met. We actually spent, like, an evening together, like, hanging out, and we were, like, super close. And it was like, I remember that. And the guy slowly, like, is like, dude, maybe I forgot about you. I'm so sorry.
He incepts him super hard.
Yeah, and then he's like, so, like, you know, would it be, like, honestly, dude, you're, like, the best. Like, can I just get $10? And then the guy gives him the money, and then he ups the ante and sends him to his other fake persona, and he's like, you know what? There's another guy on board here who has a great investment opportunity.
He's like selling bonds or stocks in this company at a very like undervalued rate.
Yeah, he's like, the market's like not properly valuing this company because there's a lot of like bad press about it, but I happen to know it's on the up and up. So like, if you want to get in on the ground floor with this, like you stand to make a lot. So that's like I feel like that's maybe
He sells him Bitcoin, basically.
just, whatever. Future, right. I think that's like generally like what we're, again, why this book is so awesome is like the scam has remained the same. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it is starting to develop in earnest now, which is why it's so interesting and why I feel like Melville is so perceptive. And this might have to do with his biography, but just like to this kind of thing. But yeah, like the false promise of the future kind of also is a thing. Like, just wait or just trust me. That's like one of the main axes of like trust that the Compass Man is using all the time is like something will occur in the future that's positive. Trust me.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's like one example where I think he's there's like an old guy, like a sick old guy down in the ship.
That was the dirtiest one. That was the dirtiest.
He
scam.
just goes on to him, and he just kind of gets this guy feeling like we're friends, we're cool, it's all good, and like he literally is just like, if you give me $100 now, you'll get more later. Like that's literally it. That's like literally the whole scam.
And the guy's like, I have like 4 1857 pennies. Can I get like $1? And he's like, nope.
yeah, exactly.
It's like, that'd be unfair, sir.
And like that guy's characterized as like shitty too, but just like still able to be taken advantage of.
That's
like,
the miser,
sick.
right?
Yeah, he's sick, but he's a miser, and like that's not an admirable quality. But you still end up being like, damn, this guy, for however much this guy is miserly, penny pincher, maybe over like exaggerating his illness or whatever, it's still like fucked up. He's still old. And
well, I think that's also a really interesting aspect of a lot of the characters who get scammed is that they also have very clear
always.
character flaws, right?
Yeah.
There's the miser. There's the young student who's like super arrogant and like super kind of like thinks he knows everything, and I forget what he's reading, like Horace or something.
Tacitus.
Tacitus, right? And the confidence man is like, oh, don't read that crap. This is like, that's going to ruin your life. Here, read this other thing. Go buy it from my friend who's selling the, whatever, right?
I know what it is. It's because it matters. He's like, don't read all of these like, all these Greek and like Roman people. Read Mark Akenside's poetry, The Pleasures of the Imagination, which I didn't really further look into that, but it just seems like a dig at like this whole idea of like the future and like your imagination is what's being hijacked to manipulate you.
It's not don't think about the past or whatever. Think about how great things are going to be in the future.
And this is part of the social critique, I feel like, is that that's where like eyes culturally were being turned in general. This industrialized shift, this cultural, the Civil War, and then this industrial shift by the late 1800s and into the early 20th century is like, we're done being stationary. We're starting to ramp up this sort of the notion of progress, and so we need you to sort of just believe in something that is not tangible, and has not. There's no like argument for just having existed prior or anything like that. It's just you gotta trust me.
I think one of the most striking literary points that I found was like just the use of the word confidence man. It like after only a few pages, you like become distrustful of the actual phrase, right? Mm-hmm. It's like anytime that is being used, you're just like, obviously this is being forced by this guy, and it's yeah.
Well, the word's meaning gets basically maxed out.
Yeah, that too. Like I feel like there ended up being 1,000 definitions of the word confidence.
Right. Yeah. Even.
Yeah, 100%. It's just the classic like linguistic phenomenon of just like the meaning starting to like melt away after overboiling. You know what I mean? It's just like turns into this mushy nothingness after being used so often and so repetitiously.
There's another, just like, even I have the I forget what it's called. The Reader's Digest kind of American, heritage copy, but it's on 48 to 50. I'm not going to read the fucking pages, but it's like right away I was struck by there's this guy who's talking about like global charity, like in that segment, and even that I was like, it's just what's still fucking. He was just talking about like NGOs essentially, like
Yep.
he was just like, if everyone just gave, I don't know. I forgot. Fuck. Let me read a little bit of it. The world's charity is to be a society whose members shall comprise deputies from every charity and mission extant. The one object of the society to be the methodization of the world's benevolence, to which end the present system of voluntary and promiscuous contribution to be done away, and the society to be empowered by the various governments to levy annually one grand benevolence tax upon all mankind, as in Augustus Caesar's time. The whole world to come up to be taxed, a tax which, for the scheme of it, should be something like the income tax in England, a tax also, as before hinted, to be a consolidation tax of all possible benevolence taxes. As in America here, the state tax and the county tax and the town tax and the poll tax are by the assessors rolled into one. This tax, according to my tables, calculated with care, would result in the yearly raising of a fund little short of 800 millions. This fund to be annually applied to such objects and in such modes as the various charities and missions in general Congress presented might decree, whereby in 14 years, as I estimate, there would have been devoted to good works the sum of 11,200 millions, which would warrant the dissolution of the society, as that fund judiciously expended, not a pauper or heathen would remain round the world over. But he's lying, and
He's basically talking about Bill Gates.
Yeah,
Like he's
lying,
Bill Gates.
and he's just like, send me money, it'll go to some pyramid scheme or just some murky
The charity to end all
concept of
charities.
good.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was just so funny to me, and it was called like what was it called? The Wall Street Spirit.
Yes.
I just like, damn, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the sort of things that like are super early in the book, like, and then things get a little more, I would say, metaphysical in a way as they move further in.
Yeah. I mean, because later in the book is when he starts kind of like interacting with characters who are, I would say, like less easy marks for various reasons, right? So there's the Charlie Noble, who himself seems to be kind of a scammer. And then there's before that there's the Missourian, who is this like really kind of just like hard nosed, like, don't fucking talk to me. I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say. He's
a misanthrope.
He's characterized as the misanthrope. And so
It was a challenge for the confidence man.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he encounters these kind of like progressively less easy marks, and then has to kind of step up his game, as it were, in terms of like walking them through these like really obtuse, convoluted, like philosophical argumentations about why they should loan him $20. You know what I mean? Like it just becomes like very, very like wild.
But that's what I love about it, is that like the Missourian comes in and he's somebody who, so I would say the confidence man is the herb seller, right?
Yeah, in that interaction, yep.
And he's, like a common man would be, he's a moderate on slavery. The Missourian's an abolitionist, but he's also like, because everyone needs to have the freedom to be fucking left alone. So he's still like an individualist on some level, which is I think what gets exploited ultimately. But the point is, like, yeah, he is the sophisticated Mark. He's the person who has had the education and has led him to this, whatever stereotype of being, which is a misanthropic person. And so, like, that's when all these, like, name drops, like the Johann George Zimmerman on solitude and Francis Bacon on knowledge, and Hume on suicide, just get dropped as like, it feels a little bit like, obviously Melville's read these things and like is in conversation with himself a little bit maybe, but yeah, just like, here's how you know that this person read all the other texts that make you think this, and this is how you can still fuck with people because
Right.
they're reading a script, essentially.
Yes. Well, and I think it's telling that the chapter 21, where the Missourian is introduced, is just titled "A Hard Case,"
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
because it's not as simple as a lot of the other characters that the Confidence Man has scammed previously in the book.
The titles are as funny as anything Wallace writes. You know, like over wordy, kind of like silly.
Yes.
You know. But yeah, that's all I have to say. But I forget what happens ultimately to the Missourian, though. And
Well. So ultimately, the Missourian, the way that the Confidence Man finally winds up scamming him is not in their initial conversation when he's the herb doctor. He leaves, does something else, and then comes back and interacts with the Missourian again as the philosophical intelligence officer, which is
the CIA.
which is I don't know if there was some like historical context to that term, but this is basically a guy who runs like a temp agency, except for like young men to go like live with someone and do labor for them on their farms and stuff, right. And so he comes back and talks to the Missourian, and they get into this really long, philosophical discourse about, because the Missourian's like, I've had too many bad experiences with hiring young guys. They're all scoundrels. They're gonna steal from me and sleep on the job, and they're lazy and blah 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 blah. So I'm never gonna hire one again. I'm waiting for speaking to the context of the time. He basically goes, I'm gonna wait for automation. I'm going to wait for all these fucking jobs to become automated on my farm, and I'm going to buy the machines. I'm not hiring any more dudes to come help me out because they've all scammed me. And the Confidence Man, in the guise of the philosophical intelligence officer, engages him in this very long and detailed argument about like persistence of identity, because the Missourian's position is that, the classic like the boy is the father of the man or whatever type thing, where he's like, all boys are scoundrels and therefore all men are scoundrels and I'm not hiring anymore and blah, 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 blah. And the Confidence Man gets into this whole thing about St. Augustine, who like changed his entire life from boy to man.
Yeah.
And, ultimately the Missourian just kind of like has like an emotional breakdown and just starts like screaming. Like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not hiring anymore. They're all terrible and da 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 da. But finally, he's just like, well, do you really have a good one though that I can hire?
And he's like, I have a
and he's like, yeah, I do. I have the best one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's got a great head on his shoulders. He's got good shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. And then
he's like, give me $20.
And then he's like, here, take this and send him my way in a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And you just know there is no boy.
So of course, there's no actual. The philosophical intelligence office does not exist.
No. I wish it did.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I'd work there. But I think what's interesting about the Missourian as a character in that moment is that he is like the opposite of the Confidence Man. He's like a caricature with like a stable identity. He's like, I forget his actual name, Pitch or something, I think. Or Pith, I forget. He has a name. It starts with a P.
The philosophical.
No, the Missourian. I forget the Missourian's actual name. But he's like, I'm this guy and I believe this, and you're not going to fucking change my mind. He's very like one-dimensional, kind of a caricature of a certain type of like frontiersman person in the American psyche at the time, and that stands in stark contrast to the Confidence Man, who's this like weird, fluid, identity shifting chameleon person.
Right.
So I just think that's an illustrative exchange, because it like, I think really sets up the two poles of like what Melville is working with in terms of identity and character.
And he's a hard case because in this, finally, the Confidence Man had to transform twice in order to triangulate a position that could pin him down, where he'd be like, just to get enough of a wedge of doubt in there.
Are you saying the first time he met him, he was the herb doctor, right?
Yeah.
So he had so he had to transform. Totally. He had to learn.
Yeah.
He had to like figure him out and come back as a different person.
Yeah, he's the T-1000.
He's Mystique
know?
from X-Men to keep with
Yeah,
Marvel.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then I'd say like there's a bit of like it's not entirely I would say the Missourian kind of has to break for the point to be made by Melville. It's not fully clear to me why he would, except just by exhaustion or something. But
Yeah. Or he just points to like the level of charm the confidence man has.
but if you're
Maybe.
all, I guess if it's true though, like if you have enough people sort of demanding the same sentiments from you, who are all different but kind of all the same in their thought and their aim, you can get broken down, I suppose. So it's not like unrealistic that would happen, like.
Yeah. They should probably like make people that are working at a insurance company read this book.
Oh God, I don't know.
Oh geez, that would be
Don't-
dark.
on.
Well,
Don't give them the power of literature.
Yeah. I mean, I do think in terms, you guys are talking about how he like actually breaks down the Missourian psychologically, kind of.
Well, I'd say it's the first time that the confidence man had to take on two manifestations in order to achieve his goal.
Yes, right. Yeah, and I think like some of the stuff, and this again speaks to the historical development that Matt was talking about earlier. Like, it does read as like, come on, man, like how did people fall for this shit? Like this guy just being like, have confidence in the human race, loan me $20. Yeah. But this was obviously a very different time in terms of like that being like a social value. You know what I mean? That being something that people wanted to live up to and be like, I'm a good Christian, I'm a good citizen of this country, I believe in my fellow countrymen, and I sort of presume that they're telling me the truth and that we're all in this thing together, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that it hits a little different today when we're all so distrustful of fucking everyone we meet, basically.
But it also does relate to today too, because there's plenty of people that still get fucking scammed by people on the internet all the time.
All the time.
100%.
When I was in the hotel, I was
the
actually
Nigerian prince.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in the hotel, I was watching this Nicolas Cage movie where he played a con man. I forget what it was called. Definitely not the Wicker Man.
Con Air.
But it was something man.
The Confidence Man Air.
Matchstick.
But in the beginning of the movie, he was like...
It probably was Matchstick Men.
It was
Right?
Matchstick Men, and it was really
Okay.
good. I only watched half of it.
I like that movie.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna finish it. But yeah, totally. I was reading this book while not at the same time, but you know what I mean.
Thinking about
and
the
it
movie.
was, yeah, totally. Just like that kind of person is still out there, and there's still people that get swindled by that kind of level of conning too, which is
Or just like catfishing is like the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you take on a new identity in the digital space and you con people into giving you money. It's obviously it's sexually based in a way that these were not, but
Right.
similar vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, there's also just another funny idea that's brought out sort of towards the end is the idea of the unfriendly accommodation, which I just laughed at, which is just like you can give some starving man some food or some means to make bread or something, and then I mean he's basically, like I said before, I think he goes pretty hard on the whole loan thing, the interest of a loan, and just like the evil of usury, I guess is the term.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then it comes sort of full circle to the barber at the end too, right? Or towards the end, where there's at the beginning of the book, the barber on the ship prominently displays a no trust sign in front of his
Right.
thing, which means you can't get a haircut on credit. You got to just pay cash. And then by the end of the book, the confidence man, I forget, I think still going as the Cosmopolitan at this point.
The confidence man basically like stops the show, ends it being the Cosmopolitan for it feels like almost a third of the book.
Yeah. And I got to say that was one thing that I like just in terms of the fun that I had reading the first half of the book, where he's switching identities like so quickly. I was a little bit bummed that he stuck with the identity of the Cosmopolitan for as long as he did in the back half.
Yeah. The little phrase was the loan of friends act, the auction and enemies. But I think he stays as the Cosmopolitan because, like, I mean, I think one of those academic articles, I wish I could attribute better, but the description is like he is the false savior, basically. Like, he's kind of it's really easy to think that he's the good guy by the end of the book, that the Cosmopolitan is like the correct position to have. And even I don't have a very strong critique. And you're right, Gabe, it does make a lot of sense if you see him as make more sense if you see him as like the same entity, basically. You know, morphing into this final complicated form that's still got the same intentions to, like, trick and scam and lie to you.
Well, it does make sense to me, though, that, like, you'd want to settle on that form if you're a swindler con man, though. It's like, wouldn't you want the social esteem to gain that confidence from someone by being, like, appearing upper class? It's kind of like the Gandalf the White version of the confidence man. He turns into...
It's basically Frieza's final form.
Yeah.
But I do think, there's probably a lot there in terms of like social views and class politics, in terms of sort of like, because it's not sort of like, it's interesting that it does build sort of in sophistication, where he starts out as this deaf, dumb, mute guy holding up a sign, and then goes to this, person who can't, this like figure of social pity, like this crippled African American man, and then he kind of slowly progresses up the like social ladder within his character scams to
and class too, I guess.
That's what I mean. Yeah, class and sort of like general social status, to this figure of the Cosmopolitan, which is where he kind of eventually settles. And those identities are accompanied by increasingly kind of complicated and difficult, like, gambits that he has to use with his interlocutors. Like, at the beginning of the novel, it's like, look, I'm poor and I can't walk, like, just throw money in my mouth, which is literally what happens.
Yeah.
And then by the end, it's like, I have to talk to you for 8 pages about St. Augustine in order to get you to, give me $20 for this farmhand. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But the question is... go, Paul.
I was going to say, it's interesting that, like, he levels up socially, but the amount of money doesn't seem to get any higher. Right?
True,
it's always
true.
like $10, $20.
It's almost like that's not what it's about for him or something.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, that amount of money back then would be a lot compared to now. Like, if someone gave you $10 then, that would probably be like at least $50, $70 now, probably more. I'm not good at this kind of shit.
Yeah.
But it is a bit of, like, it seems like towards the end also, like, a love of the game.
Yes,
he's just like,
definitely.
Damn, I got him. Then yeah, I'm good. Fuck. But the other thing I was gonna say was that, like, right, like, he's using these disingenuous and complicated arguments by the end, and that's when it feels more like a insidious evil. If he, there's nothing wrong with, like, giving money to someone with no legs. You know what I mean? Like, what's wrong is that it's potentially not a real guy, and he's lying, and like, it's the existence of that person that is causing there to be an evil that spreads to every class, every status, and every interaction of everybody in every class and every status in a way that's poison for the entirety of, like, society. So, like, that's the problem. And there's no way to know who that is.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's, one of the other things I think is really interesting in terms of the progression is that, like, there are at the very end of the book, spoilers, like he's almost found out by, at least the way that I read that scene, where him and this other guy are sitting around reading the Bible in this cabin, this old guy, and there's a bunch of people kind of sleeping in these bunks, like chiming in at like sort of like a Greek chorus almost, like but this kid comes around with his own kind of like little mini scams, and he's trying to sell. He sells him like a 10-cent little way to lock the windows of his room so people
baby
can't. So people,
man.
yeah, baby confidence man. So people can't get in and steal and steal his money. And he sells him like a 25-cent other little trinket. But one of the things that he sells to this old man that the confidence man is talking to is a like a little microscope type thing that he claims can help you detect counterfeit bills. And the confidence man, I believe, has just given him some counterfeit money or something. There's something, and so the guy's looking at it and he's like, "This is fake, dude. Like this money's fake." And the confidence man kind of has to scramble. He's like, "Oh no, it's not. That guy was scamming you. You can't trust those things." And that's kind of how the book ends: is him almost being found out through this, little baby confidence man scammer.
Right.
And so the cycle kind of starts anew, it seems. And I also read a little bit that like some people interpret the ending of this book, which the final line is just, I guess I'll just read the final paragraph.
Yeah.
The next moment, the waning light expired, and with it the waning flames of the horned altar and the waning halo round the robed man's brow, while in the darkness which ensued, the cosmopolitan kindly led the old man away. Something further may follow of this masquerade. And that's the end. And some people have interpreted that as Melville intending to like write a sequel or another text dealing with the confidence man. Which I think would be interesting because it does feel sort of cyclical. Like there's a clear progression in this day from, so in terms of, like we said, social status, class, and then the cycle starting with this little baby confidence man who comes around at the end. And you can absolutely just see him running this whole thing back in a week on another boat going the opposite direction,
Yeah. So you think, is it extra depressing that you think maybe there was a potential furthering of the themes that would have been some sort of more hopeful, I don't know, take on how things were developing, but he was so depressed that he couldn't even write it?
I mean, I think it's true. It's a true to life, I guess.
Yeah. Because they're talking about
He had plenty of time. He didn't. He kind
True.
of J.R.
Yeah, he could have done it for sure.
F. Scott Fitzgerald.
He kind of
Did.
George R. Martin it.
George R. Melville.
Yeah. I'm just not going to write it. I'm just not writing it.
I'm just not going to do it.
I'm rich and I'm done.
Wait, don't get me wrong. I'm doing it, but I'm not going to do it.
I'm doing it. I'm not. Yeah.
You're never going to get it. You're never going to read it.
I wish I had more to say about that biblical thing too, because they were talking about like the wisdom of Solomon, and like they were getting into like they were getting also, I think, notably into the apocrypha of the more contestable things in the Bible that are claimed to have not been real within the Bible.
Right.
So like just to further the themes of like who has the ledger of truth here, who's
Exactly.
Who's got the final say in where this ends and begins. Yeah, I love that part too, because there's like you said there was like that alternating light, right? That was like blinking over the thing. And I believe in the beginning
Something
of
like
that,
yeah.
that last chapter, there's just this like kind of creepy image of it's literally the devil on your right shoulder or whatever, the angel on your other shoulder. Like the light was like illuminating a painting in such a way that it was like lighting up alternatingly an angel and a devil, and then there was like so it was like a saint and Jesus, and then like Moloch.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Being lit in alternating time, which is kind of just a cool image. Yeah.
What about the? We should talk about the Indian hating.
Yes, we need to talk about this
Oh, shoot,
section. So this is one of the obviously to modern ears most difficult sections to read, I guess, in terms of just like racism.
Yeah.
Because it's well, yeah. Do you want to lay it out?
No, you do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's talking to, I believe this is the beginning of his conversation with, I forget, who the hell is he talking to in this section?
Yeah, it's tough
This
to
is
remember.
the beginning of his conversation with Charlie, I believe. So he's already assumed his identity as the Cosmopolitan, and I think this is the person that he speaks to the longest over the course of the text.
Doesn't he? And I think also that's important because when he's talking to Egbert, they have a fake conversation in which he makes Egbert play Charlie in a weird way.
Yes.
Where it's just like, yeah. There is a play acting segment with the mystic and his disciple in which they both pretend to have a conversation. It's, anyway.
Yes.
Isn't his name like John something?
So the person that the story is about, and we're just gonna use the term because that's what's in the text. The Indian hater, is
Colonel
named
John
Murdoch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've read like a few short things about like who, if anyone, this might be referring to in like actual American history. So there may be some actual like historical reference points to this character, but it's sort of talking about. I mean, it's hard to get a handle on why this is in here, but it's like it's like an almost 50-page section or 45-page section of the text.
It's very significant, yeah.
Where Charlie and the Confidence Man as the Cosmopolitan are, Charlie's telling him this story about this colonel, this guy, John Murdoch, who, essentially dedicated his life to the like purifying his hatred of Indians and like killing as many of them as he could, to the point that he was basically just like living alone in the woods for most of the year, although he'd had a family and all that stuff. But he would spend most of his time in the woods like hunting Indians. There's a story behind it, and that like he had a lot of people that he was in the army with, killed in battle by the Native Americans, and he kind of like takes that as his life aim to.
Wasn't his family as well?
I think some of his family too, but maybe I don't remember if he remarries or something, because I think he still has a family by the end of it too. I don't remember the exact details.
I think he does, because that's like part of like potentially the theme or the lesson is that like he just neglects those people.
Yes.
To go live in the woods and keep hunting Indians.
Right. And so, I mean, I guess the whole thing about Murdoch isn't the whole 50 pages, but this is where he's that's all part of the discussion with Charlie. Because then they get into this other stuff, which maybe we should talk about too, about like the press, which I thought was interesting. But anyway, so this is all before that. And yeah, he's just telling him this story about this guy, Murdoch, and kind of, I guess, sort of trying to figure out what Murdoch as a character says about humanity and men, and like what men are capable of.
Do you remember what Charlie's position was initially, or why they started talking about it?
Well, so then there's this other character in the story of the judge, right? Where the judge is someone who I believe Charlie knew, but who would use Murdoch as like an example of, this sort of question of like misanthropy versus charity in our viewing of other men, right? Yeah.
Like maybe has he taken some sort of cause for sympathy with his situation and just made it metastasize into something despicable.
Right,
I guess.
right, exactly. Like
It's certainly not a pro-Indian hating sentiment that I think is meant to be taken here.
Definitely not. I mean, I
I
read
agree.
one article that actually equated this section to Moby Dick and Captain Ahab and his desire and hatred
Oh,
for
that's interesting.
killing whales, and basically saying that like it's an inherent aspect of the American dream at the time, manifest destiny and all that shit. Just like it's an unavoidable aspect of society at the time, is like, you know,
And I believe
killing
that, like,
and exterminating.
but I think there was also an irony because he's talking about abolition as well. That I read something about how like it was weirdly like you could be sort of an abolitionist and sort of even if you were a kind of soft abolitionist, as they would say, where you were like, yeah, they're people and they should be treated better, blah blah blah. It was still you could do that, but it was still way more socially acceptable to just be like kill all the native peoples. Somehow
Right.
also in tandem with like, you know, these other people should have their freedoms and it's not right. There was some just sort of untenable contradiction going on in the American psyche at the time.
Right. I mean,
One thing
Yeah,
that
go
I
ahead,
read,
Paul.
another thing I read that I didn't, that kind of shocked me, which I shouldn't be too shocked by it, was that like Thomas Jefferson was like a big proponent of the extermination of Native Americans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, big time.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Big fan.
I thought that he was one of like the more liberal progressive founding fathers.
Here's the spoiler alert: there were no liberal progressive founding fathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just didn't. That was first of all, the categories just didn't apply then. But yeah, I mean, they were all to a person, basically. You know, various degrees of unrepentant racists.
Yeah.
Well, the HBO show about is a total farce.
I'll tell you what,
Right.
I was
Right.
you were conned into watching.
I was
that
totally
stuff.
conned.
Yeah.
HBO confidence man to you.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I think we should talk about why. I mean, we are, but like talking about why this is in here in the first place as such a substantial chunk. I mean, I think we've already hinted a little bit at like sort of the place of the relationship to Native Americans in the American psyche at the time. But like, it's interesting that, you know, the way Murdoch is described through Charlie vicariously through the judge as well, which is like, I just lose track at that point, which is like of who's who and why they're talking. But he's almost this. So, okay, can I talk about Kant for a second? So
Go for it.
So Kant, you know, talked about, I forget if these are his terms. It's been a long time since I read Kant, but he talks about like the good will or the great will, and then the like evil will, right? And the good will is the person who, you know, will get up in the morning, and even if they don't want to, and they think it sucks, right? They'll drag themselves out of bed and do the right thing, right? Which is the Kantian sense of duty, right? Mm-hmm. You do the right thing whether you want to or not, and whatever. And so you're like, oh fuck, it's 4, you know, it's 6 in the morning. I don't want to get up. I don't want to go do the right thing. Well, you do it anyway. Kant's the corollary to that, and Kant thinks that this type of person actually does not exist, is the evil will or the wicked will, right? Where you get up in the morning and you drag yourself out of bed in the morning and you're like, oh God, I don't want to, but I have to just do evil things. Like, you know, It's like the begrudging evildoer. And Murdoch kind of felt like that figure to me, where he's just like, oh God, I don't even care about this anymore, but I just have to get up and go like hunt Native Americans today, you know? And I do think he probably wanted to and felt committed to it, but like, I don't know. It's a very strange character.
This one confused me as well. Like, the best I could sort of wrestle from it during the reading of it was like just the way maybe like a sympathetic and kind of understandable aversion can become something all-consuming and detrimental to your life and literally violent and bad for everyone in your life, as a parallel to the kind of, you know, commodity-driven dissolution of trust amongst every interpersonal interaction in America or something like that. But that's the best I got in terms of that segment.
Well, I mean, one thing that I'll say about it that I felt as I was reading it, and you know, obviously CW's all over the place here, but you know, it seemed to me to be like a relatively subtle parallel to how racist sentiments tend to develop, like even to this day, right? Where, you know, the character of the judge at one point makes this point. He's talking about Murdoch's life and how he had all these people that were close to him killed by Native Americans and so on and so forth. And he says, such are the facts, the judge would say, upon which, if one seeks to moralize, he must do so with an eye to them. It is terrible that one creature should so regard another, should make it conscience to abhor an entire race. It is terrible, but is it surprising? And then there's this later discussion about how, like you said, Matt, he kind of like forsakes his family, and like this becomes like the central aspect of his identity. And it's that progression from like one instance of something to now this is my whole worldview. You know, it's like, oh, yes. I had a friend in high school who was raped by a black guy or whatever, right? Therefore, QED, all black people are evil. And this is this is my worldview now. Right. You know what I mean? And I feel like that so that's kind of what I took from it in terms of like a critique of the way that these views develop from just like, you know, mental and moral weakness.
Now, my question is, on a cynical note, is the confidence man perversely spinning that to, I forget if this is true, to go, you see how a prior negative experience can mutate into something horrific and all-encompassing, and therefore your lack of trust in me is a very similar quality, and therefore you should give me $20.
Yeah, right.
Well, because like that would be of a piece of the book. I forget if that's what happened.
But this is the whole weird thing about that section, is that the whole story about Murdoch is told by Charlie, not the Cosmopolitan.
Yeah. Right.
So it could be that that's where Charlie's going, right? Because the whole like meta of this section is that Charlie and the Confidence Man are doing this game of chicken about who's going to spring the trap first.
Yes.
You know? And so that could be where Charlie was headed with that story for sure.
Is Charlie the first failed mark? Is he a failed mark?
Well, yes, he is, in the sense that the Confidence Man, I believe, doesn't actually get any money out of him.
They keep trying to get each other drunk too. They're like,
yes,
have a little more wine.
But they're both trying to drink less than the other. But also being like, look, man, I actually drank a bunch. But there's, you know, they're talking about how much they've drank, but there's only like that much gone out of the bottle of wine, and they're like, oh, you're wrong, man. I drank a bunch already.
They're like, a gentleman doesn't leave a felloh gentleman hanging on the wine front. Yeah,
it's such a funny, like, just like tense, interesting scene.
Yeah.
But then, yeah. So of course, there's the chapters 31 and 32 are where the Confidence Man finally strikes first, and he's like, you know, I'm in severe want of money. My good friend Charlie. Mm-hmm. And the other guy, also being a scammer, is like, fuck, like, you beat me to it. And he just jumps up and he's like, oh, you want money? And da-da-da-da-da. And they have this like fight. And then there's like this
this wasn't about true friendship. I knew you were actually always a con man. And then he's like, yeah.
And then there's this weird scene where Charlie, like, metaphorically but also written literally, like, turns into a snake and has to be like magically brought back by the Confidence Man. You remember that?
No, man. What?
So this is chapter 32, or it's the end of. So chapter 31 is entitled "A Metamorphosis More Surprising Than Any in Ovid."
Okay.
And I'll just read all. This is all of chapter 31. In want of money, pushing back his chair as from a suddenly disclosed man-trap or crater. Yes, naively assented the cosmopolitan. And you are going to loan me $50. I could almost wish I was in need of more, only for your sake. Yes, my dear Charlie, for your sake, that you might better prove your noble kindliness, my dear Charlie. None of your dear Charlies, cried the other, springing to his feet, buttoning up his coat as if hastily to depart upon a long journey. Why? Painfully looking up. None of your whys, tossing out a foot. Go to the devil, sir, beggar, impostor. Never so deceived in a man in my life. And then chapter 32, which is entitled Showing that the Age of Magic and Magicians is Not Yet Over, begins, while speaking, or rather hissing those words, the boon companion, Charlie, underwent much such a change as one reads of in fairy books. Out of old materials sprang a new creature, Cadmus gilded into the snake. The cosmopolitan rose, the traces of previous feeling vanished, looked steadfastly at his transformed friend a moment, then, taking 10 half-eagles from his pocket, stooped down and laid them one by one in a circle around him, and, retiring a pace, waved his long tasseled pipe with the air of a necromancer, an air heightened by his costume, accompanying each wave with a solemn murmur of Kabbalistic words. Meantime, he, within the magic ring, stood suddenly rapt, exhibiting every symptom of a successful charm. A turned cheek, a fixed attitude, a frozen eye. Spellbound not more by the waving wand than by the 10 invincible talismans on the floor. Reappear, oh my former friend. Replace this hideous apparition with thy blessed shape, and be the token of thy return the words, my dear Frank. And then he comes back and they're like, haha, that was a weird joke. But it's like written as just like a real thing that happened.
I wonder if he's another one of these demonic like shapeshifter entities, and money is the only.
I think that's part of the implication. Yeah, like that they're both shapeshifters.
Serpent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I totally blanked on that having happened. Yeah. Or just assumed it was like in my memory like a metaphor, or, you know.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the weirdest scenes in the book.
I think Charlie is Salazar Slytherin.
Maybe.
I think he's Snake.
Wizards and Snake.
I think he's Nagini.
Nagini. He's Nagini.
Wizards in America.
This is a prequel to
Yeah,
Voldemort.
this is a prequel to Harry Potter.
Oh God.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know how we necessarily got to that part about the end of his discussion with Charlie about Charlie being a missed mark,
or just an equal in a way, or just some sort of
yes.
He finally met something at his level of subhuman demonic abilities. You know, he's like, oh shit, my bad.
And he just
I didn't realize you were
strike
demon.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie flipped out and turned into a snake for a short time. Just
Shut up.
Yeah. What else? What other scenes? What other sections did you flag, or you thought were worth diving a little deeper into?
Well, more broadly, I was just kind of curious, like, because it's funny. There's definitely the whole like. I was talking off the podcast with you about this game, but the problem of other minds, and the inheritance of, the epistemology being called into doubt, and that just sort of being the catalyst for the concerns of this book. And it's funny because we're reading Arthur Machen as well, and I was just thinking
Subscribe
about
to YouTube.
I was just thinking about how, yes, do. Like how that takes place, a couple decades after or whatever. Not decades. Am I? Yeah. Like in the 1890s, right? Where that's more. I just find this a similar. It's the same quandaries and anxieties in a different country. In England, and like in a different way are like being worked through in the whole like science knows not. the truth, the chaotic truth under all this stuff, pierce the veil, and like, see the ways in which we are hardly in control of this world, and it's all a fiction, and blah blah blah. I'm reading that a little bit in tandem with this, and it was just an interesting thing to read. So I was just kind of curious, like, do you think Melville has any sort of, is he pointing in any way towards any kind of authorial preference or way out of the bind of just sort of the foundations of knowledge being crumbling?
I don't know if he's pointing to a way out. I think he's pointing to how serious it is, or arguably trying to make it worse. Like this
accelerationism.
Yeah, sort of like again this epistemic question about how we sort of conceptualize ourselves as discrete individuals versus our increasing awareness in this time of like our social roles, our racial roles, our, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these external forces that are brought to bear on us on a day-to-day basis, our national identities and so on and so forth, right? How is it that we make sense of the idea that there's some one unchanging essential self underneath it all? And I think in this character of the Confidence Man, Melville is saying that there just fucking isn't.
Yeah, I would kind of agree. I would say he's lamenting that fact, and he is, in a way, somebody who maybe is appealing to a kind of moral constancy, like just kind of an intuition almost, or something like that, like as opposed to what, like pragmatism maybe, or I don't know, that might not be fair, but like the other copes that he might see in the face of this, right, which pragmatism might count as one of, and as an attempt to like wrangle and deal with this situation. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's plausible. I mean, I think that again, whether or not Melville is lamenting it, I'm not as sure. I mean, I don't think he's necessarily celebrating it. I think, I mean, the pragmatism thing maybe. I mean, and I don't think, I don't have the timeline on like the pragmatists, but certainly Dewey I don't think was writing yet or was even alive. Maybe he was. Dewey was what? 59. He was born 59, so he was 1859. So he wasn't around yet. But certainly there were people who were kind of like Emerson and Thoreau and other sort of people working at the time were sort of moving into that in that direction. Peirce and James and all that. I think Peirce was probably alive then. Let's see. I'm just doing this on the fly. Peirce was 1839 to 1914. Okay, so American pragmatism was kind of like starting to become a thing as a philosophy following Emerson and Thoreau. And I think that in terms of I mean, one thing Melville may be sort of advocating here is the sort of like social utility of the fiction of identity, but its actual falsehood.
Right.
That may be the direction that he's thinking or headed. I was also thinking in this connection about that last kind of like meta theoretical chapter, which is chapter 44, which is titled "In which the last three words of the last chapter are made the text of discourse, which will be sure of receiving more or less attention from those readers who do not skip it." And the referenced last three words of the previous chapter are quite an original. And so this is where Melville's Melville is meditating on the idea of an original character literarily. Right. But I also think probably elucidating claims that we can generalize to actual individual human lives as well, right? So he's talking about how like there's really not no such thing, but it's a very rare again, a rara avis to have any original character or any original individual, which is again sort of this dig at Emerson, this sort of self-reliant, unique individual. Melville's kind of saying that just doesn't exist either in literature or in real life, I think.
Yeah, it maybe he was hinting at, like, who's, by the last sentence of the book, like some never written elaboration on these thoughts. But you finish the book, and I gotta say, it's a bleak thing. It's discouraging, and you feel the presence of that bind very acutely. And I don't know if there's been, I don't know what, like, is a contemporary attempt maybe that you could say, Gabe or Paul, about, like, other ways in which maybe that have failed to try and deal with epistemology or something. It's very like philosophical. It's out of my depth a bit. But like, what are contemporary maybe ways?
I mean, I don't know if I don't even know if like you have to try to deal with it though. If like, what's wrong with just displaying it? Because to me that is almost a way of dealing with it as is, just like displaying a form of art and how you feel about something through a book. And do you have to have an answer to anything with that? I don't know.
True, you're right. Yeah, I guess I don't
like
really
even
think
asking
so.
the question or displaying a viewpoint of the American people or whatever is just like that. To me, that can be enough. There doesn't have to be an answer in there.
Yeah, I would say, this is a big question for our philosophy reading group, which you can join if you join our Patreon, because then you can join our Discord. We're doing some philosophy reading there in the new year, which all of our Discord Patreon members are welcome to join. So patreon.com/spinecrackers. So that's a big question. The problem of other minds, identity, etc. Probably not worth getting into here. And one thing that I will say is that, which I think is kind of a dumb point, but maybe not totally dumb, is that, in contemporary society, I think is probably leaning into embracing this view that Melville was suggesting as a sort of arguably lamentable fact, which is that identity is not static. Identity is kind of socially interdetermined. You think about stuff like gender, right? The way gender categories are being sort of subverted and made less and less relevant in modern society through sort of conscious decision making and pushback, like from people who are thinking about these issues. Maybe that's one sort of way in which the problem's not being solved so much as just embraced. That let's just dissolve the whole issue.
Or watching, the same issues to a fucking T described in this book play out now in ways that are so discouraging, because now we're talking about, a couple hundred years to just be despair inducing a little bit, but also to have this book be so have been so like shocking almost to read in some ways, like, and how to this day you see stuff where people are just having notions of their freedom and the benefit of themselves being weaponized in super complicated and interconnected ways, and how the con goes on and becomes, just like in this book, this monster, this this meshwork of lies that perpetuates itself.
Yeah, and I think, just the whole, the sense that I get from Melville is his view that all of these things, identity, concepts of freedom, concepts of species and national fellow feeling, none of these things are natural. These things are all social. They exist insofar as we interact with each other on the basis of them, right? I can be in one moment a deaf mute old man holding up a sign, so long as you believe that I am that thing and you interact with me on that basis. And so for all intents and purposes, that is what I am. And I think this is why it's important that we don't ever get a sense of the confidence man's interiority. We don't ever get a sense of like what he or they act like, quote unquote, actually look like, or quote unquote where they're actually from, or any of the quote unquote actual facts about their life, is because all of these things for Melville exist, or at least what it seems to me he's saying in this book, exist insofar and exactly as far, no further than our collective buying into them in our social relations.
Right. Only made possible by pre-existing notions that change with each contact with each stranger of a varying, biography and whatever, class, etc.
Exactly.
That's some prescient shit, I would say, for 1857.
Yeah.
Or probably earlier when he was writing it. So, is he a Slytherin, I guess? 'Cause he's...
Dude. I forgot the Harry Potter song. How does it go, Paul?
Dude, we just watched Harry Potter.
I know. I was about to do like something totally different, Star Wars or something.
Ba 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 ba, Harry Potter. We can't do that with this. I mean, he's a Slytherin. He's a fucking.
Your life's on the away. It's like you're always stuck in second gear. When it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year.
I'll be Harry Potter.
If you lend me $20.
Oh shit! I think I have to go. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Slytherin, dude.
He's a snake. He's literally the other guy.
The other guy literally turns into a snake.
Yeah. Like, what do we have to discuss? What's there to discuss here?
Slytherin.
Yeah.
I think most people are snakes. Or
and then there's a few other people in here that are probably different houses, but not worth talking about.
Yeah. I had a word.
I definitely have a word.
Oh shit, I don't.
Matt, you go first.
Okay, first of all, this word rules. Second of all, I don't know how much pointage it's going to give you in Scrabble.
So Paul, explain, or Matt, explain this segment so Paul can look for a word.
This is Paul's. Oh, you want to search for a word though, Paul? So this segment is. Do we have a name for it?
I don't know. Do we? Scrabble word corner.
Vocab
Paul's
corner.
Scrabble
Vocab corner.
But this
Paul's Scrabble segment. I like that.
A good Scrabble word, aka an excuse to learn a random piece of vocab. Mine was, I don't know if this is how you say it, but marplot or marplo, M-A-R-P-L-O-T. I feel like that could get you a decent amount of points placed correctly on a Scrabble board.
Okay, so what's the context of where that occurs in the text, and what does it mean?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I just wrote it down.
What's it mean?
But it means one who frustrates or ruins a plan or undertaking by meddling.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, pretty great word.
I'm trying to find mine. I know. I swear I saw it earlier. I know I circled one. There was a couple that I liked in here. Again, like thinking about where the hell did it go?
I think mine's magi.
Ooh, that's a great word.
Yeah,
it's good because you can get, if you can think of it, it'll get you out of a bind. Maybe get a double, triple word
in your game. You can
score.
crawl into a hole.
Yeah.
Well, because it uses a lot of common letters. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a good word to have, in your repertoire.
What does G give you? 2?
G's only 2, but M's 3.
Yeah, that could dig you out of a hole if you do it right.
Okay, so mine, and I have to look up the definition because I actually didn't. I just circled it, and and wrote word next to it. So mine is wait, what the hell? Come on, Google, you're killing me. So mine is connubial.
Oh yeah,
Connubial. Connubial, which is
sexual.
It's basically another way of saying conjugal, like related to marriage or whatever. But yeah, I had just never heard it before, and I was like, good word.
Nice,
Good
man.
word.
All right, so Dib's Not.
Oh shit.
For the final segment, which is where we give our scores for the book, Anthony Boccatano style.
Oh, God.
And by tradition and Spinecracker's fiat, the person whose book it is goes last, which means Paul has to go first because I dibs nodded.
It's kind of unfair because you didn't even say that it was coming yet.
You knew it was coming, dude. We do this every time.
I know. I was waiting to say dibs not, but
Yeah, well,
Gabe
beat you to
you.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you did
confidence
con me.
man, you dude.
give me $20.
For emotional damages. Yeah.
This one's really honestly, this is like the hardest one to rate because I really feel like I didn't even read this book. Like,
Wait, could you say a little bit more about why you feel like that? What do you mean, you didn't read this book?
I had like a prolonged ADHD experience where I literally read half the book, the first half twice. And I was like, I got nothing. Like, I don't know. For whatever reason, it just like the whole time I was reading it, listening to the audiobook, it just went in one ear out the other. I just couldn't get a grasp of the language.
Just didn't click.
I couldn't focus. I just couldn't focus on it. I need to like meditate or something. So it's honestly really hard for me to even rate the book because I feel like I didn't read it. I almost want to pass and like read it again in 20 years. Can I do that? Can I pass? Because I feel like my rating is going to be unfair.
You can update it later, but you cannot pass.
You can't pass, but
You shall not pass,
You
dude.
can update it later. You shall not pass, dude. Yeah. This book is your own personal Balrog.
Yeah.
It's not. Like I just feel like I'm not going to give it enough credit because I didn't understand it or just like I didn't read it correctly or whatever. I'm just going to give it a 3 because I just, I feel like if I actually did understand it, I could have gotten. I just could have been way higher.
Yeah.
I don't think it's bad. I just think that I'm a bad reader sometimes, and I have a bad reading experience.
That's your lived experience.
That's
dude.
your lived experience. It's your truth.
Yeah.
My truth is that I did not read this book, but I read it. If that makes any sense.
Yes. And a
Definitely,
3 is a
dude.
perfect hedge.
Yes.
I don't feel that bad because I watched a lot of reviews on it on YouTube, and people were like, "This is a hard book. I feel like I need to read it again." Like people like across YouTube were saying that, like, I think I need to read this book again. So I don't feel that bad.
It's a very hard book, for sure. Okay, well, for me, I loved it. I thought it was, both prescient and sort of philosophically interesting, and kind of like like we said at the beginning, just a document of the time in a really fascinating sort of juncture in American history. It is funny, and I just viscerally really enjoyed it in terms of like these. I wouldn't say it's a page turner, but like I was like, this is fun and cool, and all these weird little stories, and the characters all seem to be interesting and sort of serving various purposes to me. I think that people need to be reading this book, and it doesn't seem like that people are in the sort of popular reading world, even though people know Melville and they read Melville. So I loved it. For me, it is a 4.53.
Whoa.
I'll just say ditto a lot of what Gabe just said. I will emphasize for those on the fence. I don't know. I guess if you can get around the language, it is fucking hilarious. Also, it's dark. It's just dark comedy. It's just funny the situation we're in. I am with you though, Paul, in the sense that like I don't know if you could tell that I was also kind of. I read it slowly and carefully, and even I was like forgetting shit and like, scrambling around to recollect certain points and like make a point out of it. And I think that's because it is, as a Donkey would say, a masterpiece. I think I think a really good novel invites many rereads and rewards you for them. And just prescient, interesting, funny, fucking yeah, to the extent it can be a page turner. I fucking loved it. I'm gonna read it again at some point soon, and I'm gonna also give it a 4.74.
That's your highest score ever.
I think it might be.
It's getting it got damn close to a 5 for me.
Yeah, dude. Well, so okay, so what held
I
it
quit
back?
reading.
What held it back from a 5 for you? Because I can say what held it back for me.
I mean, like, partial. I mean, I don't know if this is like fair to it, but again, this is now just going now into the just like bullshit, subjective, my lived experience. Like, there were some. Because of the ending, I don't know. It did feel like the beginning of something. There were parts that were bloated out and felt like kind of the personal, I don't know, obsessions of Melville, and I felt his like finger on the scale every now and again, and also just a personal failing of like, it was, I guess it was part of the theme of the book, but like, this sounds so stupid. I don't know, but like,
Stupid.
Stupid. I'm dope.
That sounded stupid.
This sounds so stupid to me.
Shut up, guys. Fuck, shut up.
That was smo-dupid.
Oh my god, guys. Stop making fun of me. I don't know. I can't appeal to anything more than my like, just like there wasn't this crystalline bing.
Yeah.
Having
that's a
finished
thing.
it.
That's a thing. Yeah, a lot of that same stuff for me. I also just wish, like you said, some of the stuff was like a little much for me, in terms of bloatedness. Like, okay, I don't need that long about whatever topic. You know, I get it. But then also, like, I enjoyed so much the like weird chaos of the beginning of the book that I was just, again, subjectively, and maybe there's a good argument for why it was written this way and all that stuff, and I'm open to that. But I was just subjectively bummed that we were stuck with the Cosmopolitan for such a big chunk of the book. Like, I wanted to see more identities and more scams and more shape-shifting, even than there was, which there was a lot already.
Nagini and just
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely one of those books that I'm willing to say like, I'm just not potentially getting it on certain parts for sure. That's most books, but this one I could feel it acutely as a possibility. So yeah, I don't know.
Sick.
Fucking awesome though. Yeah.
Great book.
I don't know what to think about this book. I'm going to quit reading. If anyone wants to take auditions to take me a place because I apparently can't read, we'll do that on Twitter. Send in your resume.
Yeah, so we're gonna need some big whatever by whatever glossies, and yeah, we'll be taking resumes.
Yep.
No, we won't.
Reading.
That's not true.
JK.
No, you're not, Paul. Stop it.
Irreplaceable.
I'm never reading a single word the rest of my life. No more reading ever.
It's about food menus and Tinder and road signs.
Nope.
Exactly.
I'm not doing any of that. No more.
Shit. You're not eating, driving, or dating. Okay.
Nope. Okay, love that. I love that for you, Paul.
That's nice.
Thank you.
All right. Well, if you're still here, you'll love our Patreon. It's patreon.com/spinecrackers, where we post additional things and additional pictures, and you get to join our Discord, which is popping off. My mom just became a Patreon today. Shout outs, Mom.
Woo!
Which is great.
Cute baby stories, maybe.
Yep. It may be in the Discord. I said I would talk her through it. I was like, Mom, it's just AOL chat rooms. You can do this. But
like, I barely remember that.
I don't think she knows.
So
I don't think she even knew what those were. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Patreon, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. You know the deal.
All the platforms that matter.
Come on back next week, where we're gonna have our year-end Spinecrackers Awards Spectacular. Best books of the year, worst books of the year, bunch of other categories, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
And get ready for another stellar year where we do it even better somehow. Even though it's impossible, but possible is nothing.
To the moon. Impossible is nothing.
Diamond Hands to
Send
the moon,
your
baby.
vote in. Send your votes in for host of the year.
Ooh.
Ooh, okay.
Actually, don't
Paul-
do that.
Paul's
I'm
looking
gonna
to
be
get
last.
hurt.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. We could make a Twitter poll. We don't want to though.
No, I don't want to see that at all.
No one wants to see that.
Because Paul's going to get favorited.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the most. I'm the worst of both worlds. I'm pseudo intellectual, but I don't actually have the beef of education like
true.
Gabe does. But
That's
I'm not
not
nonchalant
true.
like Paul. I'm just like, yeah, I'm trying so hard. Turn this off now.
Bye.
Bye.